So this is the third part of this tutorial, and this one is using a technique called compound effects. I'm just going to let this render real fast, those blue frames, and now it's going to show it at real time. Compound effects are when one effect influences another. Sort of like when we did the fractal noise for the displacement map. This is using two different effects. So I recorded this earlier and I lost the recording, so I'm just going to keep the work I had and talk my way through it. You start off with two layers. You call the bottom one, they were solid layers. So I would just go layer, new solid, and then call it wave world. And then make a layer, new solid, call it caustics. I then right clicked on the wave world layer and pre-composed it by going, right click, pre-compose. Double click on it to open it. And this is the wave world layer that was created. Okay? That I had made. On here I typed in wave world. Let's see, where is it? Right here. And I put it on this layer. Now, wave world, here's the settings I have for wave world. When you open it by default, it's going to show you a wireframe view. You change that right up here under wireframe view to height map. You're going to start to see what the effect's doing. So under height map controls, I made my brightness 0.8, my contrast 0.25, gamma 3.0, render dry areas as transparent, transparency 0.108. Under simulation, I changed the wave speed to 0.3, damping to 1.0, reflect all edges, pre-roll 3.64. For ground, I made a new composition called Logo Wave World. It's just some type I threw in. Had to be pre-composed. I put it underneath in the Wave World pre-comp, and I hid it. So for the ground, I chose the Wave World text. It's going to react to the waves are going to react when they hit the type. Steepness 0.11, height 0.01, wave strength 1. Producers, I changed both of them to line. They were originally set to ring. A producer, let me show you right here. This is the producer for the first one, and that's the producer for the second one. Two different waves. That's what's going to be causing it. So you can position them however you want, and that's going to affect your animation. Height length for producer 1, I put 0.354, width 2.479, so it's going all the way across the screen. I didn't want small ripples, I wanted it to go across the screen. I didn't change the angle. Amplitude 1.03, frequency 1. I didn't change the setting for a phase. Now, producer 2, set it to line as well. These are the positions for both of them. Like I said, they're just off center from the center, and they're in contradictory. They contrast one another in their angles. Height 0.805. This is for the second producer. Width 2.001. Amplitude 2.9. Frequency 1.0. And I left the phase alone. So that is the Wave World pre-comp. I've got the Wave World layer. That's the solid that I started with that I pre-composed. Made these changes and put my text logo as a pre-comp inside of it. It's nested inside of here. So then the layer that was above it, Wave World was on the bottom, Caustics is on the top. That was the solid layer that I started off with. I went to Effects, typed in Caustics. Right there, put it on the Caustics layer. And here's what I changed. Bottom, Wave World logo. I have it right here as well. It was already inside this pre-comp. I placed it in here as well from the project. Just dragged it in, put it beneath, and I turned it off. Okay? And I did the same thing. I put a sunset picture in here, and I turned that off by clicking the eyeball icon over there. Let's go back to the Caustics layer, the effects. So for bottom, I chose the pre-comp that you can't see. Scaling 0.650. Repeat mode once, because I don't want it reflecting all over the place. Tiled out, that will look bad. Centered it, blur 4.7. You can change the scale whatever you want. It's going to affect how big the logo is at the bottom, whatever you use for it. You can use an image, video, whatever. I just use text. Water. Wave surface. I selected my Wave World pre-comp. That's what's going to affect the animation. The Wave World effects are being read and adjusting the caustic effect. So caustic is this layer. Wave World is in this pre-comp, and it's reading that pre-comp to adjust it. So wave height 1.0, smoothing 50, water depth 0.71, refractive index 1.26. I left the color alone, surface opacity 0, caustic strength 0.05. Now for sky, I told you before I placed a JPEG of the sky. So for sky, I chose the JPEG in my layer stack down here in the composition window. Timeline. Scaling 1.5. I wanted the sky big enough that I could not see the horizon. I just wanted the color in the clouds. Repeat mode, reflected. If layer size doesn't fit, center it. Intensity 0.610. Convergence 0.05. Lighting, I chose distance source. I made the intensity 0.79. It's where you can change the settings if you want. Light height 0.181. Ambient light 0.20. Like I said, this is my second time going through this. It was a lot of work. Material diffuse, I set to 2.0. Specular reflection 0.120. Highlight sharpness 32.20. So that was these two effects. I then made this blue line, and it had too much of a mask path for it to follow, so I'm going to delete that. We don't need that anymore. So I then made a blue solid, and with the solid selected, I grabbed the pen tool, and I drew the path that you see there. That's what the boat will follow. Now this is the important part. When I first put the boat in, it didn't look right. It needed some work. So I selected, this is my initial boat. We'll pretend this one doesn't exist. I selected the boat, then with the the pen tool, I drew this shape. Because when anything is selected, that's how you make a mask. So I'm going to press M. There's my mask. And there's a feather on it. Let me press F. So I feathered it 34 pixels. Just so that when the boat is touching the water, you don't have a hard edge. To adjust your feather settings, I clicked the toggle mask. If you click that, it's going to hide your mask, and you can see better what's happening. You can click that off or on. So I was able to see how much I wanted to feather it, so I didn't have that hard edge as the boat was hitting the water. So to get the reflection, I duplicated the layer, Command D. Then, for scale, I made it -100. When you make it -100, it will flip the image. So the image is now flipped, and I just changed its position to line it up how I wanted it. And then for the opacity, I made it about 11%, so that it's, like a reflection. It's not a strong reflection. You just barely see it in there. So I then parented, by clicking my pick whip, I parented the reflection to the boat. So as the boat will, once we move the boat down the path, this will move with it. On the reflection, I put a turbulent displace effect. You can just go over to your effects and type turbulent to get turbulent displace. It's right there. Drag it onto the layer. I gave it an amount of 60, size of 100. I keyframed the turbulence from 0 to 1 full rotation. Now remember, whenever you're working with rotation, evolution, or phase, the first number is 1 full circle. The other one is a specific number of degrees. So it's going 1 full circle in the evolution. so that as the reflection appears in the water, it's going to have a waviness about it to make it look like the reflection is reacting to the water. Okay, so as I said, I did all that to the duplicate, then I parented it to it. I took the mask from this one layer. Let's see, where's it at? Right there. Let me zoom out. Oh, let me turn my back on. There we go. So here's my mask. So when the mask, I just have part of it selected and the pen tool. I hit copy. And then when I went to my original boat, hit P, or you can scroll down to get position, selected the word position, and then pasted the path in. So the boat plus the reflection that's mirrored to it are now, and I can hide that layer, because I just put that shape layer to get the mask. They're now following this path. It's moved a little too fast for my liking, so I right-clicked on the path, the original layer that it's using to follow it. I went time stretch, stretch factor 300, so it's moving at 1/3 the speed. So it's a nice lazy speed for the slow moving waves. That's all the work I did to this. And since the boat's on top, it's going to pass over the logo, and you'll see how the logo, whatever you put in there, an image, a video, or text, you can make a logo in Illustrator. It will react to the caustics in Wave World, as you're seeing here, and since the boat's on top, it'll pass over. So this is another technique, another option you can do for using logos in water and things being hidden at certain parts of the time. The only thing hiding this is just the boat passing over it and the effect. So I'm going to press 0 to render it, and you'll see the final result. Let me hit save. Always save frequently, save often. Hit the 0 key to render. To preview the animation. And one last thing. This layer, I slid it down, set the keyframes. It comes in earlier, because once I slowed it down 300%, the keyframes spread out. So I had to slide the layer down physically to have the boat enter in when I wanted it to. Okay, so this is a preview of the effect. You can see the wave world and caustics affecting the logo beneath it and the boat passing over it because it's on top. Again, I duplicated the boat, flipped it with scale -100, changed the opacity of it, put a turbulent displace to make the reflection look like it's reacting to the water. I also put a mask around the bottom so you wouldn't have a hard edge. And this is just one example. Again, like I said, this was a 3-part series. One idea, some water, a boat, and a logo. And I executed it 2 completely different ways. The first one, I had, let me go over to where that was. We had a photo of a kayak and a photo of an oar. I animated the oar, duplicated the keyframes multiple times once I had the animation on the X, Y, and Z axis because I made it 2.5D. Then I parented to the canoe. The first one was the beginner way. I showed you how to animate it using position and rotation. And the second way, we use a mask path and then auto orient along the path. And with this one, we did 2 different things. We had the water reveal the logo, and we also did it with the kayak revealing the logo. And we did it with the kayak, we had a giant shape we put around it to use as an alpha mat that we parented to the canoe. And for this one, the reveal was just the waves reacting to the compound effect were revealing it, hiding it, and showing it, as well as the boat passing over it. And this one, like I said, used a photo of a kayak, and the idea for the boat for this one was just a simple paper boat that you could make out of a newspaper. So, 2 different looks, one a little bit more playful than the other, and just the same idea, just executed 2 completely different ways. Boat, water, logos revealed and hidden by certain aspects in the scene. So there's always more than one way to do something, and just try and have fun and play around with different types of ideas and techniques to get your animation the way you want it. Thank you very much.